Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. A federal judge this morning ruling in favor of former President Trump while deciding how the former president can share about the 2020 election case. But the judge also setting limitations, striking down several requests from Trump's team. NTD's Iris Tao has more from outside the federal courthouse in D.C.
This is a partial win for both sides. This morning, the first hearing in Trump's 2020 election case, Judge Tanya Chukin largely sided with Trump's lawyers in ruling that only sensitive materials should be barred from being shared with the public. That's a blow to the Justice Department, which requested a broad protective order against Trump, basically preventing Trump from sharing with the public even non-sensitive materials. They argue that Trump could intimidate witnesses, but Trump's team fought back, saying that the DOJ was trying to infringe upon Trump's First Amendment rights. And Trump himself said earlier this week,
when we say I can't talk, I will talk about it. I will. They're not taking away my First Amendment right.
This morning, Judge Chukin said that prosecutors have not shown a good enough cause for a blanket protective order, but she did hand prosecutors a win by broadening the definition of what could be considered sensitive. For example, she struck down Trump's team's request for designating witness transcripts and videos as non-sensitive, saying that sharing them with the public could risk intimidating witnesses. And she added that while Trump has the right to free speech, quote, that right is not absolute. And now prosecutors are expected to turn over 11 million pages of documents to Trump's legal team, although most of them will be marked as sensitive, meaning that Trump will not be able to share them with the public. And next, we're going to see another round of legal fights in this case surrounding trial dates. And Trump's team has until Thursday next week to propose their own preferred date. And Trump yesterday lashed out at the DOJ for their proposal of a January 2nd trial date next year. And Trump says that's too close to the Iowa caucuses and thus will be election interference. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Iris Tao, NTD News.
A turn of events in the Hunter Biden investigation. The DOJ today appointing a special counsel, U.S. Attorney David Weiss. Weiss is at the center of a controversy as to whether the DOJ engaged in political meddling in that case. And NTD's Melina Wisecup has more on this. So, Melina, first of all, what does this special counsel mean for the case? And more specifically, tell us why some are dissatisfied with this decision.
This appointment of special counsel gives Weiss, who's been investigating this case for years, more authority over when and where to file charges. The DOJ usually appoints a special counsel when they have a conflict of interest. Right now, the current DOJ has appointed 3 special counsels, one for former President Trump's election case, one for President Biden's classified documents case, and now this one for Hunter Biden's tax evasion case.
Mr. Weiss has the authority he needs to conduct a thorough investigation.
But some are not happy with this appointment, particularly Republicans who are in the Judiciary and Oversight Committee. They recently urged for the DOJ to appoint a special counsel, but they're not trusting David Weiss in this case. Here's one post from the Judiciary Committee writing, Weiss can't be trusted and calling the appointment a way to whitewash the Biden family's corruption. And much of this distrust stems from whether or not Weiss had ultimate authority in this case before the appointment. An IRS whistleblower recently released an internal email from the IRS and testified this before Congress.
Yes, he told me he was not the deciding person on whether or not charges were filed. He told us that D.C. U.S. Attorney had declined to allow charges. He told us that he had requested special counsel authority from Maine DOJ and denied that authority.
And was denied.
Now, Weiss later rejected this, saying that he did have ultimate authority, writing that in a letter to Chairman of the Judiciary, Jim Jordan.
2 days ago, an FBI agent confirmed their testimony. Who are you going to believe?
And this appointment of special counsel comes after a plea deal for Hunter Biden fell apart. Now federal prosecutors are saying this case is going to trial. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
The Iowa State Fair is going in full swing. GOP presidential hopefuls flocking to the fairgrounds in downtown Des Moines, shaking hands with voters while gearing up for the first primary debate in Wisconsin later this month. NTD's Sam Wong brings us more.
It's time for retail politics to shine. Several Republican presidential candidates making stop in the state of Iowa this week, mingling with the very crowd they're catering to. The Iowa State Fair kicks off annually in August, and it attracts millions of attendees every summer. And around election time, it becomes one of the major battlegrounds for presidential hopefuls to rally voters. Iowans can not only enjoy some food, but they also get to shake hands with the candidate. The state's Governor Kim Reynolds is hosting a one-on-one fireside chat this year, giving all contenders a chance to speak. Here's former Vice President Mike Pence sitting down with Reynolds.
And we need leadership that can appeal to the better angels of our nature, leadership that can at least have the possibility of bringing the American people together, to strengthen our nation, to revive our economy, to defend our values.
Aside from the one-on-one interview, Des Moines Register's soapbox has long been a tradition at the event. All contenders have 20 minutes to make their campaign pitch. The 2024 GOP primary debate will be kicking off in a few weeks. For those who aren't qualified to make it onto the debate stage, the Iowa State Fair is the opportunity to reach out to the crowd. Here's North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum chatting with folks while flipping chops and burger patties. Former President Trump's campaign said that he will also be at the fairground on Saturday, but won't be interviewed by Reynolds. Sam Wang, NTD News.
Suicides hit a 5-year high in 2022, based on CDC data out yesterday. Over 49,000 people took their own lives last year. That's an uptick of 2.6%. Joining us now to discuss the mental health issues facing our country, we have Democratic Congressman Adam Smith of Washington State. Congressman Adam Smith, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Congressman, White House requesting $40 billion in supplemental funding, with a significant portion going toward fighting the fentanyl crisis. We're seeing this opioid epidemic plague our nation. Homelessness is another major issue. Some say that mental health is a key underlying component to many of these problems. You've written a powerful book on the subject of mental health. How should this issue be approached?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I wrote the book. It's a very personal story about my struggle. And, part of it is hoping that this will help other people. My calculation is that there's probably tens of millions of people in our country who are suffering from some combination of anxiety, depression, and chronic pain. So I want to help those people, A, understand they're not alone, and B, navigate the system to find a path to getting better. But you're absolutely right. There are broad public policy implications of that reality that absolutely contribute to homelessness and drug abuse and crime. People's inability to deal with the basics of mental health can absolutely snowball into larger problems. And it definitely raises that issue of how should we address those problems publicly? What should we do to put people in a better position to deal with their mental health challenges? I think is one of the central public policy questions that we face in this country right now.
You raise a lot of very good points. Your book, Lost and Broken, it does draw on your own personal experience suffering from chronic pain and anxiety. If you could just tell us a little bit about your own personal experience.
Sure. Yeah. So basically, when I was between the ages of 40 and 50, on a couple of times I developed just crippling anxiety. And I always try to explain to people that there's sort of the normal ups and downs, stresses and strains of life. And those are mental health challenges too. You need to figure out how to better process stress, strain, good and bad outcomes. But for me, it crossed over the line into clinical anxiety. It was an uncontrollable, nonstop existential fear that made it impossible to sleep, eat, function. It was really difficult, and it didn't have like any specific identifiable cause, and that is a deeper problem. So as this hit me, for a while I was like, I'm just going to get through this. And then eventually I figured out that I couldn't. So I sought treatment, psychiatrists, psychologists, and then in the middle of it, my hip started going bad based on a physical problem. So then I struggled physically, and I had to seek help from physical therapists and hip surgeons. I have 2 artificial hips now, and sort of working through all of that. My book starts in 2016 when I'm at my absolute lowest point. The anxiety is terrible. The pain is terrible. I don't know how to treat either one of them. I'm on a whole bunch of different drugs. So then I go back and say, well, how did I get there? How did I get to this point? And then crucially, how did I get out of it? How did I finally find treatment providers who could help me? Because as I chronicle in the book, I saw over 100 different healthcare providers. Now, a lot of them were physical therapists, massage therapists, that kind of thing. But it took me a long time to find a psychologist and a muscle activation therapist who diagnosed me correctly and gave me the treatments that I needed to get better. So I chronicle that voyage in the book.
Yeah, and I have to say, you know, your book is just very open and candid, which was very refreshing, actually. And you also talk about some of the limitations of the nation's healthcare system. What were some of the eye-openers for you on your personal journey?
Well, I guess, you know, two things. First of all, one big thing on your point about, you know, the open and honesty in the book. I found that was one crucial thing to getting treatment for mental health. And you had to be honest with yourself. You really have to be honest about what you're really feeling, what's really going on, because it can be awkward sometimes. It's like, how do you explain to somebody that you can't sit in a room with 4 or 5 people and have a conversation without just, you know, feeling like your head's going to explode? You have to be honest about what's going on. I think one of the biggest limitations starts right there. When you go see healthcare providers, they don't really listen to their patients particularly well, and they don't always communicate clearly. They are very educated and very smart about what's going on with the brain and the body, but each individual is so distinct. They have unique things. How do you actually communicate with someone to let them know what's going on and how to get treatment? That communication problem is a big limitation. Second is access. I mean, I mentioned this in the book. I had health insurance. A lot of the providers that I went to either wouldn't take my insurance or wouldn't take insurance in general. So I had to figure out, well, can I afford to go see this person? And, you know, that's a big limitation as well. I think the third thing is we're too reliant on medication, particularly in mental health. Rather than having the open, honest, deep conversations that you need to figure out what's going on with an individual, we tend to go, here, take this pill. It'll make you better. Yet a lot of times it doesn't. It just hides the underlying issues.
Congressman Adam Smith, thank you so much for sharing your journey and joining us.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.